Bend Around the Wind by Skyleia. Chapter 29, Flight of the Phoenix, Part 1. Moreau was suspicious from the get-go. He seemed too helpful in a way. He reminded Tony of unpleasant businessmen who kissed your butt when you were there and tried to undermine you the second you turned around. He was also a lot older than the rest of the yearbooks they saw. Juyu was curt and confident in everything she said, which was a good enough act. She asked for the maps while being suitably vague and used a tone that made it clear that she was not to be argued with. Considering this was her first rodeo, she did very well. Then the old man gestured and asked to be followed so that the right maps were chosen. So this time only Tony followed. They did not go far, only to the next room.
"That's a very interesting armor you have there,"
the man grunted once they were on their way. "Indeed," Tony replied.
"I can't decide whether you're a Skrull or some strange little lapdog,"
Moreau said next. Tony had quite a lot of things he could have answered to that, but he swallowed it all down. Not the time to be bothered by some poking, so he just kept walking.
"There are not many wormblends in the Empire,"
Moreau continued, not acknowledging Tony's silence.
"Well, not anymore."
Moreau looked at him again to see if he got any reaction out of him. Tony realized the old man wanted to figure him out.
"Makes me wonder what kind you are out of the remaining few."
"What happened to the maybe I'm a Skrull theory?" Tony asked.
"We just passed a gate that would have let me know if you were a shapeshifter,"
the man answered. Tony bit back the curse that wanted to escape his mouth. This was not a problem. He had a few suitable explanations up his sleeve. Clever, he said instead.
"Technology from before the war,"
Moreau continued when they finally reached a heavy door. Tony could have tried to see what the yearbook entered into the panel on the side, but it would have been even more suspicious.
"Are fortunate, you see."
"Which war?"
"The Skrull invasion,"
the man answered, then stepped inside. Tony followed. He was not concerned. He had his suit on. The DNI was active. Repulsors available. The room inside was a bit bigger than the previous office. There were dozens of displays active in the air, most of them star maps, but some of them showed different parts of the aerodrome and the tower they were in right now. Tony also noticed that in the end of the room, the displays were projected in a smaller form. When he looked more closely, he realized that there were small, almost translucent little discs lined up one after another, and every one of them had a different picture coming out of them. They had to be some sort of optical discs, only none of them was bigger than a dollar coin. They were probably not the same kind of technology as the discs on Earth.
"I still remember how the propaganda changed,"
Moreau said again as he gazed at the displays.
"One day we were told to hold on, that we will stand victorious, and that we shall not allow the oppressions. Next, everything was about how the Empire has brought the Golden Age, how we have been lifted up to stand beside the greatest race of the universe."
Not that I don't appreciate the history lesson, but I also don't really care. Can we get back to what we came here for? Tony asked. He did not like where the conversation was going. That kind of tone reminded him of bitter veterans, those who lost a limb, friend or family, or their sanity in the war, and decided that Tony deserved a punch in the face, or even better, a bullet in his head for his contribution as weapon manufacturer. Oh, how ignorant he was back then. He shrugged at the crazy PTSD soldier and smiled at the cameras while the police dealt with his attacker. He really hated to remember those times. He sort of wondered why there were only a handful of attempts like that. There should have been more, probably.
"You'll see, I wonder."
Moreau talked again, still standing more by the door than the displays.
"Are you from a planet like this? Some great imperial territory? Or are you one of those spineless little worms who joined them for power and money?"
Oh, not good. Not good conversation at all. Tony turned fully towards the old man to look at him. "How about we get this over with, and then you won't have to wonder," Tony offered. He kept his stance relaxed for now, well, as relaxed as he could be in his suit.
"No, a lot depends on your answer,"
Moreau said. The door behind him slid closed, the heavy metal locking into place, while the man stared at him with his red eyes.
"And on what you decide to do."
Tony was not even pretending to be relaxed at this point. And he wondered if their luck was that bad, that they actually stumbled on one of the few yearbooks who was not as obedient to the Skrulls as they were supposed to be. Oh, he almost wanted to snort, because of course their luck was that bad. When was their luck not bad? He was really starting to think that Loki's whole chaos god nature really attracted all this crap. It was not the time to think about that, though.
Really? Do any of my options include turning you into a bloody smear on the wall? He asked. The yearbook chuckled. You won't get out of this room if you do so.
Don't be too sure of that, Tony replied.
How about you reconsider whatever it is you're doing, and then maybe you get out of this relatively unharmed? And how about you stay put while my boys take care of the scrolls?
Moreau asked in return.
And then you're free to go.
Tony just stared at him.
You'll see why your answer is important,
the old reptilian asked.
If you were forced to serve like me, now's your chance to get rid of your leash.
Ah, great! Freedom fighter! Those were always so delightfully not fanatical. Nope, not at all!
Moreau, these are not the kind of scrolls you should be worried about, Tony told him. All scrolls are to be worried about. If you do not know that yet, boy, you will find yourself dead very soon.
The old man's eyes were burning with anger as he spoke.
You have some time to decide once the scrolls are dead. We'll see if you will follow their fate or not.
You really think that I couldn't just kill you right now? Tony asked. Sure, the reptilian was big, huge, and muscular, but Tony had weapons. Moreau did not know that.
And like I said, you would stay locked inside here, even if you managed to do that.
The reptilian answered.
Do not be a fool, boy. Don't risk yourself for some scrolls. I'm willing to let you go once they're in pieces. You only have to behave.
Tony knew that was not going to happen. Not just because it didn't sit right with him to let the girls get killed. Juyu was not helpless. She was armed, and if they did not catch her by surprise, she could fight back very well until Tony got out. Only Moreau said scrolls, plural, so they were after B2, which meant that they were going to Loki, and Loki was not going to screw around if he's threatened. He would turn things very bloody very quickly instead. Tony was sure of that.
You could make this beneficial for you,
Moreau spoke again.
Why do the scrolls want maps to the Silver Galaxy and its satellites?
Tony wanted to laugh. Really? At least it was certain that their cover was perfect, only they managed to find the one crazy old yearback that still wanted to rebel. There had to be chaos god vibes at fault in this. Now he was left with a dilemma of what to tell. Well, old Moreau definitely wanted the girls dead one way or another. Telling him that they were not actually with the Empire would not change much. At least for now, he believed Tony may have valuable information. He was also contemplating just shooting the reptile and trying his luck with the door. Even if it really looked thick and heavy, like a safe door, not sure his repulsors would do much damage in it.
You sent someone to our shuttle, didn't you?
Tony asked. Moreau smiled.
And they're probably already done with the girl,
he said. That meant that Loki was probably already stepping over some corpses and was on his way here. He was more worried about what was happening with Yuyu. She was alone. Loki and B were definitely fine.
I doubt that the other Yerbeks like your little rebellion. The other Yerbeks need not know when a scroll or two goes missing,
Moreau replied with a wide grin that showed all of his yellow sharp teeth. That was lucky, so they only had some Yerbeks to worry about, not all of them in this place. But he wondered how many stood on Moreau's side. It was time to act. He wasted too much time locked up in here already. He was just about to shoot the reptile in the knee or something to get this show on the road when something blinked on Moreau's clothes. He did not take his eyes off of Tony, but he gestured until a new display came up on his side of the room. Tony recognized the office-like room. Moreau welcomed them in. The big desk the old man used was turned over, and Juyu was crouched down behind it, gun in hand. She must have taken cover across from the door, and she remembered how to use the gun, too. Good girl. There were a few yearbecks lying around on the floor, probably dead, but the most interesting sight was the one by the door. B was standing on top of one of the bodies. She ripped out a bloody axe. No, wait. That was her arm. She just ripped out her axe-shaped arm from a dead reptilian. She probably killed him a moment ago. Then Tony noticed the tall figure standing there, and he felt his eyes widen. What was another scroll? Then he noticed the armor, and his eyes widened even more. Loki, son of a bitch. Loki with scroll green skin and pointed ears, no hair. But it was definitely him. It was really not the time to figure out how that was possible.
Dawa, crawl,
Moreau shouted almost irritably.
Get everyone to the top floor.
That was when Tony shot him. The blast made him stumble into the wall. His skin and his clothes were smoking from it, but it was obviously not a mortal wound, not even a serious wound. Thick skin on these reptiles. Then the old man charged, and he was fast for a senior citizen. How long did reptiles live? Oh, right, very long. Tony let his helmet slide into place around his face and charged it as well. He flew into the yearbook, punching him in the face. He felt how his metal fist connected to thick skin and bone, and the old guy stumbled again, but he was still standing. Tough bastard. Even if Moreau was not armed, his clawed fists and sharp fangs were intimidating enough, and Tony hoped that they were not strong enough to cut through Allendor. He got tossed into a wall when Moreau managed to grab hold of his leg, but Tony immediately pushed himself off of it to kick the reptilian. This time, Moreau hit the wall on the other side. For some inexplicable reason, Tony remembered his fight with Thor. It was not often that someone was strong enough to fight him when he was in his armor. He did not have time for nostalgia, though, because Moreau charged again, and while Tony punched him in the gut, he felt how strong claws dug into his helmet. The DNIHUD showed him the damage, but it was not excessive. Only the surface was scratched. Tony really loved Allendor at the moment. He could not pay attention to the displays and what was going on in the other room. He was sure that Moreau sent more men against Loki, Juyu, and B, but they sure had to handle them alone because Tony was really busy wrestling with a dragon man. He managed to toss Moreau over his shoulder when he first heard the yell from the other side of the door. Sark! It was Juyu. I'm a little busy, Tony yelled back as he shot 2 blasts at Moreau so that he hit the wall again. What kind of armor and thick skin did this guy have? Seriously! I can't open the door! Juyu yelled. Tony could barely catch her voice. Then she must have opened up some sort of intercom next, because while Tony flew up a little to dodge a full body slam, the girl's voice came over a lot more clearly. Loki and B are holding them up, she said. You have to get out of there! Tony grabbed Moreau again and kicked him into a wall to get him off of him. Get back from the door, Tony yelled and turned towards it. He did not have much hope, but it was worth a try, so he went with the unibeam. The blast dented the door a little, but definitely not enough. He did not have time to try anything else because he was knocked off his feet by an angry lizard again. Moreau tore and clawed at his suit, trying to get pieces off it, and Tony knew that it was denting. Not even the Allendor could hold that forever. Stark! Juyu yelled again. The door's too strong, Tony yelled when he finally kicked Moreau off. You're not getting out of there, Moreau snarled. I will tear you apart along with the scrolls. Have you tried the wall? Juyu asked hurriedly. That was a good idea. Who reinforced the walls this high up? It's not like everyone could fly. The next time Moreau attacked, Tony held his ground and grabbed hold of him, using his own momentum against him, and spun him around into what he hoped was the outer wall. He saw how it cracked up on impact, so Tony directed power into the thrusters and flew at him with as much speed as he could with such a short distance between them. The wall cracked even more. Before Moreau could grab hold of him, Tony jumped back and aimed both of his repulsors at him and fired! The reptilian snarled and yelled again, and the wall was still not broken, so Tony went for a full body slam again! This time, when he hit the huge body, the wall cracked and broke, and they both fell through it. Moreau grabbed him, preventing him from flying away, so they were falling and falling with Tony trying to punch and kick or shake him off, and Moreau holding onto him with 10 claws. The ground was approaching fast, and while he was sure that the reptilian would not be bad at absorbing some of the impact, he still did not want to try it out. Finally, he managed to squeeze one arm between them and shot him in the chest with a repulsor blast. Moreau slid off him, his claws scratching the surface of Tony's suit again. Tony shot up in the sky right away while Moreau slammed into the ground beneath. He flew back to the top of the tower, but this time towards the windows of Moreau's office. The large desk was now barricading the door, with Loki keeping it in place. There were still quite a lot of dead bodies inside, so they probably did not block the entrance right away. There must have been a lot of yearbooks on the other side if Loki felt like fighting them outright was not the best course of action. He was about to fire at the windows and fly inside when he remembered the maps. There were a lot of maps in the room he was locked up in. Maybe some of them were not destroyed in the fight. He flew back through the hole he made with Moreau's body and looked around quickly. The main panel had most of the discs on it, was half destroyed, and Tony winced, but still went over to it to search for anything salvageable. Stark! Came Juyu's voice from the other side of the door again. I'm fine. Go back to Loki and B. Juyu did not answer, so she probably listened and did just that. Tony retracted the gauntlet fingers so he could pick up the small discs scattered everywhere. There were a lot of broken ones, but he found a bunch that were not. He had a small slot in his left gauntlet he made as a container for extra energy crystals, but for now it was empty, so he put all the still intact discs he found in there. It was a lot of discs, but it did not take up more place than a handful of change. He flew back out and turned back towards the office windows without wasting any time. Juyu was with Bee and Loki, and luckily none of them stood too close to the window, so Tony aimed and broke them with a blast. The glass shattered and rained down everywhere.
Maybe it's time to go, huh?
He asked as he landed inside.
There are dozens of them outside,
Loki informed him. He still looked like a Skrull. Maybe turning back required concentration.
I have the maps. We need to go,
Tony said.
How exactly?
Loki asked. Tony looked back at the broken window.
Time to fly.
He said, girls, grow some wings and get going. I'm faster, so we'll catch up with you. He walked to the makeshift barricade that Loki still held in place, which was quite impressive, even if Tony already knew that he was strong. He gripped the other side of the desk and pushed. Some of the strain eased out from Loki then. It must have been hard to keep the door secured on his own. Don't keep us waiting, Juyu said after sporting wings from her back. Then she jumped out of the window with Bee following closely behind.
I can't fly, Loki remarked. I wasn't sure, Tony said, with this whole green thing you got going right now. I can shapeshift, but not like the girls, Loki said. I would have still liked to know about it, Tony replied. He actually felt now that whoever was on the other side was pushing and slamming into the door trying to get in. It never came up, Loki answered. Weak excuse, Jolly Green. Tony told him. I still can't fly, Stark. No problem, Tony said, and he grinned, even if Loki couldn't see it. Just hang on. That was the only warning he gave the guy before he grabbed him around the waist and took off flying across the office and through the broken window. Loki let out something close to a yelp and hissed out some curses Tony could not catch. But he did slide his arms around Tony's neck to hold on a moment later. You're insufferable, Loki told him. He did not yell, but Tony could still hear him. I could have picked you up bridal style, Tony teased. That would have been hilarious. Loki would have punched him in the eye for it so hard. He was just starting to feel okay and thinking that they got away when he heard some sort of buzzing from behind them. He could not turn around to look with Loki in his arms, but the god did so instead of him. Tony heard him curse again. Let me guess, Tony said. Something that could fly is following us. With Yearbecks riding on it, Loki added. Awesome. Just awesome!